Hello everyone. Welcome to another video. You are watching the Daily Dose of Tech, a dedicated playlist where we come and discuss about something from the tech. From past couple of weeks, I have been discussing about the Azure Bicep, which is used to deploy the infrastructure, and we have discussed a lot of things about it, like how to deploy, which resource group, what are the scope you can set, what are extensions, some of the keywords, data types that it supports, everything. And in this today's video, I'll be just discussing about the loops, two more topics, which will be loops and conditions. So without wasting a time, let's just start. And before starting, I would like to just, give a heads up that if you are interested, you can subscribe to my channel. If you would like to follow me on Instagram, you can follow me on Instagram. If you would like to connect me professionally, you can connect me on LinkedIn. Oh, okay. Let me just select this stylus and this on LinkedIn, right? If you want to ask me anything about anything, you can follow me on X, and all the notes and everything will be found on GitHub. And the most important thing, if you are interested to join other fellow engineers who are working and learning the same thing, do join our Discord channel. We are trying to make the biggest tech community Discord server, so feel free to join it. All right, so I'll just quickly go through everything what we have discussed since day one, and this is I can't believe this is the 11th video, and we are continuously posting every day. We started with explaining Bicep, that it's an infrastructure as a deployment language for Azure. It's an open source, and it usually we have a lot of ways to deploy resources to Azure, like for example Portal, CLI, and PowerShell, Bicep, and Terraform. So we are currently studying the Bicep, how to deploy resources using Bicep, right? And then there are some benefits of Bicep which we have already discussed. That it's we can preview our changes, modularity, it has no cost to work on, so it's kind of a very adaptable solution and popular solution among the community. Then there are different scope of deployment that you have to define when you are writing your Bicep file, so we discussed that. And there are a concept of resource provider and types, which is kind of which take care of a specific list of resources and maintain them. We then started with installing Azure Bicep. After installing Azure CLI, then we created our first Bicep, we deployed it, we discussed the difference between resource name and deployment name, and working with the parameter file. We also discovered and covered the data types, importing and Boolean. What are the different data types present in Azure Bicep? So we discussed everything. Then, my bad, this was the keyword, and then we discussed specifically the data types. For example, array, Boolean, integer, whatever the data types present in Azure Bicep, and how we can use them. Then we also discussed in the last video that what are the difference between import and using, and what are the user defined types, existing resources, dependency, extensions. We have covered everything, and we are almost at the end of the series where all the concept was needed to know, and we'll be soon coming up with the dedicated playlist. But in today's video, I'll be explaining you about what are loops and condition. I did not prepare any documentation or anything for here, so I'll be going directly to my browser and will be using official documentation, and I'll open the loops. So basically the situation is that obviously what it makes that in Bicep you try to deploy your resources, right? But there are some scenarios where you have to create multiple instances of the same resources, and in that case you can use the loops. So what loops will do, it will repeat your specific code multiple times, and so within the same Bicep file and using one parameter file you can create multiple resources. How it starts is, the syntax is pretty clear. You have to start with for, and then you have to give an index like how we do in the usual programming language, and then you have to provide a range, number of elements or something like that, and this can be coming from an array and things like that. So you can give just a number of elements, like for example here you define that int I is equals to 1, and you have to go till 7 iterations, so it's gonna execute whatever inside it 7 times. Then you can also loop the item through the collection, so you can create an object and you can loop the list of object and use all the values from it. Then there is collection is different. Then there is a dictionary, which I obviously dictionary object, which I just explained, but the collection is, I think, using the array. So basically, using the loop, you are kind of executing from a collection of things, and that collection can be coming from an array, can come from an object. And yeah, so you can and then there is a feature of that we can index the integer as well. So when the arrays are running, we can index those arrays so that you can later refer that index into some of your properties, and if needed you can just modify it. Adding a conditional deployment is also possible. So for example, if you want to execute if you're running a loop but you want to only execute the step which follows certain condition, then you can define it by here. There are some limits that you cannot exceed 800 iterations, and I'm not sure if there is a need of 800 times creating something, but yeah, since a resource can't loop nested child resources, change the child resources to a top level resource for more information. So basically there is an example of how to change the iteration of iterating a child resources. So they have provided us here, and now we will see how it works. So basically we have defined the parent item count, and then we have defined an integer, and what it's gonna do, it's gonna give an output, which is very common, like how we do in the other programming languages. So now the thing is that we will be replacing that integer with a storage account. So here we have started using the storage account, and then we have defined that we have defined a range where I will be starting in the storage account is gonna go here, and it will create it here. So whatever the range is gonna be, it will be creating that. So it will be creating that, and we have defined the integer here. So it's gonna create 2 times, I guess, or maybe 3 times, 0, 1 and 2. So, and that's how you will be ended up creating a storage account of whatever the n number of times what you have defined earlier. How to run a loop through an array? So you can define an array, and then you can use for name in storage account, and then storage names is basically these arrays. And so it's gonna run 3 times, and it's gonna create a unique string based on the name what you have provided here. It's gonna pick it from there, and it's gonna create a unique string ID. So that's how you are using an array property with iteration, and ended up creating unique resources. And it is very important that all your resources should be should have a unique path, because 2 same resources means they have the same location cannot exist, even if they are a different location or region, I'll say. Then there is an example of subnet, how you can, so you have defined your subnet, you have defined your name, and then you are kind of creating subnets inside it using this value. Using array and index, how we can do it? So here is an array, and you have to run an array config I and index. So that's how you will do it. And then similarly in the object we do deploying in batches is kind of a very important concept, where, just give me a second. So deploying in batches, how it works. So Azure resources are deployed in parallel by default. When you use a loop to create multiple instances of a resource type, those instances are all deployed at the same time. The order in which they are created isn't guaranteed. There isn't a limit to the number of resources deployed in parallel other than 800 resources in Biceps. You might want to update all the instances of a resource type at the same time. For example, when updating a production environment, you may want to stagger the updates for only certain number to update at any one time. You can specify for a subset of the instances to be batched together and display at the same time. The other instances wait for the batch to complete. To serial deploy instances of a resource, add batch side decorator, set its value to the number of instances to deploy concurrently. A dependency is created during earlier instance in the loop, so it doesn't start one batch until the previous starts. So basically, whenever you are creating a loop, everything gets deployed at the same time. And if there is a situation where you have to kind of do not want to deploy everything parallelly and in sequence, then you can define your batch. So if you define the batch size of 1, it will just take one value and deploy it at one time, and then it's gonna create a dependency for rest of the them. So until your first batch just gets deployed, it won't get start for the other lower one. Iteration of a child resource. How we can iterate a child resource, we have defined it here. So basically it's gonna create for I in range, and it's gonna create the iteration of a child resource. Reference and resource mode. So Azure returns an array on object representatives, basically Bicep. So we can also set everything, all these following configuration is Bicep config. But that was just about the loops. Now we will talk about the conditions deployment in Biceps with these if expressions. Okay. To deploy a resource or a module in Bicep, use the if expressions. Obviously, we know an if expression is a condition that resolves the true or false. When the if condition is true, the resource is deployed, and that what we got Bicep diagnostics. We can see it define conditions for the deployment. So if anything turns out to be true, then we can use it to deploy. So if and it's kind of a static thing, because here you have defining it here. So if deploy zone, then deploy your value, then you can use new or existing keyword. You can use new and existing to create new resources or to use an existing one. I'm not sure if it's a so it's not that super smart, as you all may be seeing that here you define a variable that what you want to see, and if that new resources is matching the new keyword, you are creating it, or if it doesn't match, you are just bringing it the name, and later then you are using the same file. So runtime functions are basically, if you use a reference or list function, you specify for conditional deployment function. If the resource isn't deployed, you get an error. If the resource isn't deployed, okay, use a conditional expression operator to ensure that the function is only evaluated for condition when the resource is deployed. The following example template shows that how this function expression. So basically how it's work is that we can define the conditional runtime function, use a conditional expression to ensure that the function is only evaluated for conditions when the resource is deployed. Okay, so if the resource is deployed, we can use the condition to assign it the values, and it's a very important two keywords that is needed. And yeah, that was all for today. We are almost done, and we have covered almost all the keywords and concepts of Bicep. What I'll be doing is that I have prepared a Notion page with all my notes and gatherings, how I wanted to teach this Bicep to you all, and I have gained a lot of great insights where I felt something I'm feeling boring about it, or it could be explained in a different interesting manner. So I have explained everything. I'll be providing all the link of the Notion page soon, and you can review that, and in the future we will be coming up with a dedicated place where all the information will be concise, and I will show you how to master the Azure Bicep in in a pretty concise manner. And yeah, that was all for today. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe, and obviously stay tuned and join the Discord channel, because we will be coming up. We have maintained our consistency, and we are producing everything, something today, something every day. So yeah, hoping that we'll be keeping this regularity, always. And yeah, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching.